So I've already made two videos about the whole gun control, gun culture, gun lobby, NRA, Wayne LaPierre argumentation, de facto absurdo logico reductionism logic. And we talked about how there are legal frameworks in place which don't really seem to give gun owners all of the rights they believe that they have. Particularly the fact that the Second Amendment actually is the nation's foremost document governing gun control law and gun control rights. And then we talked about some of the historical realities behind the whole gun ownership equates a democracy argument, which clearly is not realistic at all. And now I turn my attention towards what I hope is the end of this trilogy, but there are plenty of trolls out there, so good luck with that. And this is something that's a little bit different because we're talking about something that's very abstract and philosophical, so there's not really a right answer. So the only thing I can do is kind of try to find a middle ground. Perhaps there is some sort of point where, the anti-gun guys and the pro-gun guys can kind of come together and agree that there is some happy, trade-off we can reach together as a peoples. Do you like the Willie Nelson shirt, by the way? Check it out. I love this guy. He's such a great, red state hero. A guy that loves his country so much he refuses to pay taxes. So anyway, before we begin talking about this whole basic argument that you have a right to defend yourself, not as a actual law, but just as a part of natural human law, you got to talk about guns because there's a lot of literary redundancy here. When you talk about guns, you have this thing, well, you need them for self-defense. That's a very common argument. Well, the thing is, you don't really need them for self-defense. You need them to shoot stuff. That's the verb. That's the purpose of a gun. It's a weapon. It is an instrument designed to cause bodily harm or kill in some circumstances. So it's not a tool in the traditional sense. It's not like a car, which is a tool which has a non-lethally designed purpose, which is to transport a person from A to B. If you use a car correctly for its intended usage, nobody dies. Now, if you use a gun for its intended usage, guess what? People die. That's the point. It's all about design. And I think that's something you really have to take into consideration when you talk about a basic, fundamental right to self-defense. What constitutes self-defense and what constitutes a weapon and a tool? What constitutes a countermeasure? What constitutes things like being reactive and proactive? So these are all matters that are way, way beyond anything we can talk about in a 20-minute video. So, like I said, it's a philosophical argument. There's no right answers. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying anyone's right on this issue. I'm just saying this is something that's very deep and profound that cuts to the heart of a lot of deeper things than just gun control. But since it requires time for people to sit down and talk like rational human beings, we'll never get down to it. So good luck with that. So anyway, on this whole idea that we have a basic fundamental right to defend ourselves, our families, and our property. Now this is not an actual law, it's this idea. So where does this idea come from? Well, it comes from guys like Locke, Cicero, Aristotle. The Whigs were really behind it, so it does have some root in English common law. One of the interesting things is this whole basic right to self-defense thing is actually a huge part of Sharia laws, which is kind of ironic because a lot of the people that are, saying that guns are necessary for self-defense in the U.S. really don't like Muslims. I'm just saying, that's the statistical reality. So as far as an internationally binding document or any sort of doctrine on what self-defense is, the closest thing I could find was this thing called the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which is posted by the UN, some time ago. Anyway, quote from it is, "Every human being has the inherent right to life. This right shall be protected by law. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his life." So anyway, that's pretty much the closest thing we have to a definition of, right to self-defense as part of a globally governed treaty. But, it's the U.S., we don't care about the UN, so never mind. So anyway, a lot of stuff comes down to our ideas of what things like liberty and self-determination and due process of law are. And the fact of the matter is, even when we talk about these things, they don't explicitly go into the matters of what constitutes self-defense. That's just the problem. We have this linguistic, ball of wax here that we can't untether. So I think until we kind of iron out some standard definitions of what these grandiose, overarching, perpetually rhetorical terms are, we're not going to get much done. So just throwing that out there, that's just my suggestion for this whole gun control, pro-gun debate. So when we take a look at all these things, the standard idea is, these people that are pro-gun, they have what they believe is a basic, fundamental right to protect themselves, their families, and their property. It's it's God-given, whatever. They have that basic, inherent species right to defend their family and their belongings and their own lives. And I guess in some ways they consider owning a gun to be vital to that. Because if they have a gun, someone tries to break into their house, they can shoot them. Or if they try to take the car, they can shoot them. Or if someone wants money from them, they can shoot them. So that's their idea, that defending their themselves and what they care about is vital. And the best way to do that, according to them, is to have a firearm which they can use to murder anyone that may be perceived to be taking that away from them. That's George Zimmerman. So anyway, here's the thing, if that's the logic behind it, that you need guns to protect yourself, your family, and belongings, then, why can't you say that it's necessary to have other forms of protecting your family, or protecting yourself, or protecting your property? So basically what I want to, throw out there as some conjecture is, by your own logic, this whole self-defense right to self-preservation, natural law, if owning a gun for self-defense is necessary for one to protect his or her life, family, or property, then why can't other forms of self-defense, other means of personal protection and self-preservation, also be considered fundamental rights as well? If gun ownership is necessary for self-preservation, then why can't we have other rights, like the right to housing, or the right to employment, or the right to education, or the right to health care access? It's the same fundamental logic. You want to protect yourself and your family. Others want to protect themselves and their family. You said the best way to do that is by owning a gun. They say the best way to do this is by having universal health care, or having wider social security nets, or having guaranteed right to housing, or having the guaranteed right to education or employment. It is by nature the exact same argument. The only thing is, you want something tangible, they want something a little less tangible. What's the difference? So here's my question to the pro-gun people and the natural riders. If you can use a gun to protect your home and family from burglars, if that's basically a part of natural law, and it's completely rational and a part of human nature, then why can't other families use universal health care programs to protect themselves and their families from illness and disease? It's the same fundamental argument. It's vital to protect my assets, myself, and my loved ones. And I just want to know, what morally makes your need for guns greater than someone else's need for food, medicine, or shelter from the elements? It's all about self-preservation, right? Just something to think about. So anyway, I didn't come here to be polemic, because there's enough polemics in this argument altogether. So what I want to do is I wanted to come together and make a moral, equitable compromise. That's right, I want to throw down a compromise here. As a guy who's not really the biggest fan of the National Rifle Association, he's not really a big fan of Michael Moore either, for that matter, or any of these anti-gun groups. You know what? I don't like either of you. You're both annoying. That's my problem. So I'm coming out here as a guy in the middle ground to say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to come to a compromise which satiates the wants of everyone that feels this whole self-defense, basic right, natural law, hooey, in all manners, shapes, and forms. So here's what I'll propose to you. Everybody gather around. Get this in writing. Is that I will gladly support what you consider to be a fundamental, inalienable self-defense right, which includes unrestricted, unregulated, unabridged right to firearm ownership, if and only if you also recognize what I consider to be a fundamental, inalienable self-defense right, which is unrestricted, unregulated, unabridged rights to full health care services and treatment as equals under law. Deal. You give me free universal health care, and I'll give you completely unregulated gun ownership. I mean that. I'm serious. I will give that to you. If someone comes up with that a proposal in Congress, I will back it. I will actually go vote in favor of it, and I don't vote at all. So that means something. I'm serious. I will go out there and support it in a public forum if need be. You give me that offer, and I will take it. But you got to do the same thing. So basically, I just want you to know that I am willing to compromise. I'm not the kind of guy that wants these insane anti-gun policies in place. I want to find that middle ground. You know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, if you're a gun guy, you can own fully automatic weapons, you can own bazookas, you can own tanks, whatever you want. Take them to school, church, Burger King, don't care. You can go out and buy rocket launchers, mount them to your car, you know, like in Twisted Metal, drive down the interstate like in Road Warrior. Don't care. No waiting periods, no ammunition limits, hardly enter paperwork at all. But in exchange for that unfettered freedom, I get a separate kind of unfettered freedom. I get free of charge, government subsidized, all access universal health care protection for my wife and children, so that if I get shot in the face during my line of work, then I can die knowing that my loved ones won't go into the poorhouse if they need an operation or wind up in an emergency room and their primary breadwinner is not around. You want to defend your family, you want to defend your property, you want to defend your assets. So do I. You think the best way to do that is through gun ownership? I think the best way to do that is through better social programs, such as universalized medical care. What's the difference, morally or rationally? And then, by the way, you know, when I say free universal health care, I mean the whole shebang. I want preventative care, I want dental, I want medicine and prescription and reproductive health services. I mean, if we're going to allow guns in schools, you might as well allow condoms and the morning after pill. I'm just saying, you know, be fair. I mean, that's it. We're all about equality here. I say have unrestricted gun utopia, but also have this progressive medical utopia as well. I mean, that's really the best way to do it, right? Have A and B, both kinds of freedoms intermeshing in this wonderful post-Obama utopia we're all dreaming about. So, you know, it's just going by the philosophy of one of my favorite 1980s icons, Billie Jean. You know, fair is fair. If we're talking about go-karts or we're talking about firearm regulation in America, it's all the same thing. So anyway, to kind of wrap all this stuff up and end this stupid, pointless spiel, you know, if you're allowed to pursue what you deem as a necessary safeguard for life, liberty, and property, then why can't I do the exact same, only focusing on different areas? I mean, that's kind of the point, isn't it? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. You're pursuing what you think is vital for life, liberty, and happiness, and I'm pursuing what I think is vital for life, liberty, and happiness. And I say, why can't they coexist? If you're going to have one kind of freedom, why can't you have the other? I say it's a fair compromise, and if you're against it, well, you're an agendist and you're full of poop. So anyway, yeah, I'm running out of time. I'm kind of bored and sleepy. To sum everything up, you know, I'm absolutely 100% honest about this proposal about no gun regulation whatsoever in exchange for free health care. I believe that is an absolutely fair trade-off, and I will be behind it 100% if someone proposes to it in Congress, or if someone comes to it and starts a national movement. I will be behind it, but only if we get both. You gotta have both. You gotta have freedom A, and you have to have freedom B. So I just want you to know that I think this is a logical, justified demand, and I will defend your idea of self-defense if you defend my idea of self-defense. And just to kind of wrap things up, you know, if we're going to live in a social system with no safeguards from being shot, I think the absolute least that society can do is implement a healthcare model that assures treatment when we do get shot. And that, my friends, is how you build a better, wiser United States.